Hey guys, so it's Pastor Dwight. Don't you just hate it when things don't work out well? That live stream tonight was a total fail. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download some of the individual segments onto the YouTube channel. And that fun stuff is important. But this lesson is really at the heart of what I want to share with you guys each time we're together. So I just want to tape a quick video to kind of go over what I was going to talk about tonight. And, we've been talking about interruptions. We've been talking about detours. And I know for some of you guys, this COVID interruption detour is probably the biggest interruption or detour that you've experienced in your young lives. I can think of a detour or an interruption a few years ago that I experienced. I was watching the 2013 Super Bowl, which happened to take place in the Superdome in Louisiana. It was between the San Francisco 49ers and the Baltimore Ravens. It was a close game. Everybody was into it. We were watching it as a youth group. And early in the second half, the lights went off, the power went off, and everybody was like, what is going on? And for 34 minutes, everybody waited. And I got to admit, I was disappointed. I was kind of annoyed. I was inconvenienced. And the game went on. The game resumed after 34 minutes. The Baltimore Ravens ended up winning. But we get inconvenienced and annoyed by minor interruptions like that. But what I want to talk about tonight is what about the times in your life when an interruption or a detour is more life-changing? It's more permanent. When you can't go back to the way things were. This morning, if you watched the live stream for Normal Church, Pastor Shan was talking about our desire to go back to normal. What happens if a detour or interruption is so life-changing, so permanent that you just can't go back to the way things were? And tonight I want to look at the book of Ruth. And Ruth experienced that. The story actually doesn't start with Ruth, though. It starts with Naomi. There's a woman, Naomi. She has a husband. She has two sons. There's a famine in Judah. And so they end up traveling to another country so they can survive, so they can get the food that they need. And when they get there, at some point, when they're in this new country, Naomi's husband dies. And so her two sons, they marry women from the new country they're living in. And at some point in the future, her two sons die as well. So you've got Naomi and you've got these two women from this foreign country. And you know what? There's no going back for them. Their husbands are dead and there's just no way for them to go back to the way things were. And so Naomi, she decides to go back to Judah. And she tells her two daughter-in-laws, hey, you guys should stay here. You guys should find new husbands and just start over. And the first point I want to talk about tonight is I want to challenge you guys not to let the interruptions and detours in your life turn into bitterness toward God. Guys, I realize that when you experience interruptions and detours, there's going to be emotion. And emotion's okay. After all, pain is real. Confusion and questions are normal, and sadness is normal as well. And so the first thing I want to challenge you guys to do is just acknowledge if you're experiencing loss and pain as a result of COVID. I know you guys have lost a lot of stuff. And if you're experiencing that loss, I would challenge you guys to acknowledge it. Don't keep it bottled up. Find some way to talk to somebody about it, journal about it, do something to get it out. And we see the ladies doing this in the first chapter of Ruth. In Ruth 1, 8 and 9, it says, but on the way, Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, go back to your mother's homes, and may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and me. May the Lord bless you with security of another marriage. Then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. So again, I just want to acknowledge that emotion is real. It's raw. It's okay. I'm just challenging you guys. Like these women, they let it out. I'm challenging you guys to let it out, not to keep it bottled up. But when we move on, we see that Naomi, in her raw emotion, she moves on to blaming God. She accuses God. She points the finger of God. She says, hey, God, this is your fault. You're the one that's doing this to me. You're out to get me. And we see that in two different places. We see it in 1:13, where she says, would you wait for them to grow up and refuse to marry someone else? No, of course not, my daughters. Things are far more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord himself has raised his fist against me. And then in 20 and 21, she says, don't call me Naomi. Instead, call me Mara, for the Almighty has made life very bitter for me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer, and the Almighty has sent such tragedy upon me? So we see Naomi, she's not just dealing with the raw emotions. She actually gets to the point where she's blaming and accusing and pointing the finger at God. So I want to ask you guys, how are you guys handling the things you've lost to COVID-19? Have you found a way to express your sadness and your questions, or are you bitter and are you blaming God? Second thing I want to take a look at tonight, and I want to challenge you guys to remain loyal to people during the interruption. Remain loyal to people during the detour. When Naomi tells Ruth to go back home and find a new husband, this is Ruth's response. It's in 1:15 and 16. Look, Naomi said to her, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same. But Ruth replied, do not ask me to leave you and turn back. Wherever you go, I will go. Wherever you live, I will live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die. And this is an amazing amount of loyalty. Naomi is basically saying, listen, Ruth, it's every woman for herself here. Why don't you just go back home? You go do you. Don't worry about me. I'm letting you off the hook. Don't worry about me. And Ruth says, listen, I am not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere without you. She says, I'm going to stand right here beside you, and I'm going to walk through this with you. And guys, we need people who will remain loyal to us. We need people who will stick by us no matter what. I want to ask you guys, have you been loyal to your friends during COVID-19? What can you do this week to show your friends that you're still there, that you still care? Maybe it's something as simple as a text. Maybe it's as simple as praying for them. Maybe it's as simple as a video chat. Maybe it's as extensive as dropping something that you know they like off at their house. But I would challenge you guys to do something this week to let your friends know that you're still loyal to them, even in the midst of COVID-19. Third lesson we can learn is when the time is right, we should move on. Some of us just like to mope around. We like to feel sorry for ourselves. We like to throw a pity party, and we're just waiting for something to happen. And Ruth doesn't do that. At a certain point in the story, I think Ruth decides, hey, it's time to move on. And this is why I say that. In 2:2, it says, one day Ruth the Moabite said to Naomi, let me go out into the harvest fields to pick up the stalks of grain left behind by anyone who is kind enough to let me do it. And so Ruth gets to work. Ruth does something. Ruth is like, I'm not just going to sit around here and have a pity party. It's time to move on. It's time for us to get out there and do something. And Ruth goes out and she goes to a field. And in the Old Testament, this was pretty common. People were commanded by the law to leave extras in their fields so that people like Ruth could come and gather those things. But Ruth doesn't just get to work. She's also open to new relationships. And we see this with Boaz. At one point, Boaz invites her while she's collecting grain. He says, hey, come have lunch with me. And so she's open to the idea of a new relationship. She's open to getting to know Boaz. It would have been really easy for her to say, you know what? I've been hurt. I just lost something really special to me, someone really special to me. I'm not willing to invest in somebody else at this point. And you know what, guys? Let's be real. Sometimes it is hard to move on. But if you never move on, you're going to get stuck in the past. And I don't want to see you guys get stuck in the past. When it's time to move on, guys, move on. So with COVID-19, what are you doing to be productive? What are you doing to move on instead of having a pity party, a COVID-19 pity party? Are you open to making new relationships in the midst of COVID-19? And the fourth thing I want to challenge you guys with is I want to challenge you guys to be willing to accept help and be willing to offer help during interruptions and detours. Now, Boaz offers Ruth help. If you go back and look at chapter 2 in verses 8 and 9 and 15 and 16, he tells her, hey, come and just stay right with my workers. Don't go anywhere else. I want to help you. I want to provide the food you need. So come to my fields. And he actually instructs his workers, hey, leave a little extra for her. Drop a little extra, accidentally drop a little extra for Ruth. And he tells her, hey, if you need water, go to my well and get water. He even protects her. He says, hey, I've instructed my workers to look out for you, not to be harsh to you, but to watch over you. So it would have been easy for Ruth to reject that and say, you know what? I'm an independent woman. I don't need your help. But Ruth realized that she needed help and she accepted his help. It would have been easy for Boaz to be selfish. It would have been easy for Boaz to say, you know what? I've already got too many people, too many mouths to feed. I can't spare any extra grain. It would have been easy for Boaz to say, you know what? We just had a famine. Who knows when the next famine will be? I need every ounce of this barley that I can save up. But Ruth was willing to accept help, and Boaz was willing to offer help. So when you're in the middle of an interruption or detour, don't be too stubborn. Don't be too proud to accept help. And when you're in the middle of an interruption or a detour, if you have something to offer, don't be too selfish. Don't be too lacking in compassion to offer help. So who do you need to accept help from during COVID-19? Teens, I know you're proud. You wanna stand on your own 2 feet, but sometimes you need help. Who do you need help from during COVID-19? And teens, also on the reverse, you guys have something to offer. Who can you offer help to during COVID-19? So the way this story ends is that God provides for Ruth in an amazing way. He gives Ruth the food that she needs, that her and Naomi need. He gives her a new husband. She has a child with Boaz. Her and Boaz get married. They have a child. So God takes care of Ruth in an amazing way, both physically and emotionally. He takes care of her physically, but he also makes sure that emotionally she has the love and support of a new husband and a new family with kids. And so that made me think of somebody you guys know. You guys may not know his story. We've alluded to it a lot of times in youth group. Many of you guys know that Josh Piscula had a wife before Laura, but I will ask him to share his testimony with you guys because it's really similar to some of the things that Ruth went through. So I'm going to post that video right after this one. So don't forget to check out the video of his testimony after you check out this teaching video. But let me pray for you guys real quick. Dear Heavenly Father, thanks for tonight. Thank you that despite technological interruptions and detours, God, that this message can still go out. I pray that you would use it to reach the lives of those who are watching it. Thank you for your word. Thank you for how you provided and cared for Ruth, even when she probably thought it was the end of the road for her. Thank you for your provision in her life. Thank you for your provision for Josh of a new wife and a new family after his wife passed away. And God, we just thank you for your goodness to us. Help us to remember that during this COVID epidemic and help us to put our faith and our trust in you. In your name, amen. See you guys. Have a good night.